Hi, everyone. Welcome to Caregiver Appreciation Day. This is Dr. Karen Wyatt. I'm the host of End of Life University, and so I'm welcoming you here today to this special webinar for caregivers. And I first became aware of the challenges and stresses of being a caregiver 2 years ago when I took care of my own mom as she was at the end of her life. And even though I've been a hospice medical director for most of my career, I really never understood just how demanding the caregiver role was until I did it myself. And that's what made me want to do this webinar and offer caregivers some support and encouragement and special tools. And I'm really happy to welcome my guest today, who's going to help me with this webinar, Michael Bloom, who is a caregiver coach and expert. He himself was the caregiver at the end of life for both of his parents. And his website is caregivingwithoutregret.com. He's the author of the book, The Accidental Caregiver's Survival Guide, Your Roadmap to Caregiving Without Regret. And I'm so glad Michael's here. He also happens to be a webinar guru. And so he's running the controls behind the scenes, and he'll tell everyone a little bit about information you need to know about the webinar. So thanks, Michael, for being here today.
Well, it's my pleasure, Karen. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm so glad we could collaborate. And for those of you that may be experiencing your very first webinar, we're actually using brand new webinar technology called Webinar Jam Studio that just rolled out within the past week. So I just want to let you know, it's a beautiful technology. It uses Google Hangouts on air as a platform. But with any technology, and especially something as new, sometimes things could go a little zowie. But I have all faith. I ran my first one a couple days ago, and it went beautifully. So again, I want to welcome you. But just a few things to know for some housekeeping. One, if for some reason your picture freezes or the sound kind of goes away, 99.9% of the time you can solve that by just refreshing your browser. Okay, also, we have a chat role. You will notice on the right, there is a chat function. So Karen and I would love to know where you're viewing from. So feel free to introduce yourself and type where you're from in the chat. And again, I also want to say too, because Karen and I are doing this as a webinar, we were talking before we got started, she's actually doing a bit of traveling, and you may have noticed she's in a hotel room. So we're able to conduct this session alive, even though she was traveling. This trip came up and she's in her hotel room. So it's just great to be able to move forward. But I just want to start, now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, to let you know why Caregiver Appreciation Day, or just caregiving in general, is so important to me. I'm going to start by showing you a picture of my parents, because I take them everywhere with me. This is, and Karen, can you see the picture I'm showing of my parents?
Yes, yes.
Irving and Bernice Bloom, affectionately known as Sonny and Bunny. For my mom and dad, I was their caregiver, primary living caregiver for several years. And just to give you a little more background information of them, back in 2004, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4B lymphoma, Hodgkin's, after she had an unexpected collapse in a store. And after she was diagnosed and they went through a whole bunch of testing, she was 77 years old at the time. The oncologist was actually fearful of treating her because the cancer was in her bones and thought the chemotherapy would kill her before the cancer due to her weakness. My mother was a strong person of faith, and she really wanted to stay and fight with us. So she went ahead and took the treatment, and she succeeded. The cancer at that time ended up cured, but she ended up a frail elder on the other side. So for the next 5 years after that, my dad became her primary caregiver, and I was her secondary caregiver. Although she had her mind, she needed full help with all activities of daily living and maintaining the household, and my dad did a beautiful job with that for 5 years. But one early Sunday summer morning, my dad apparently had an issue that was really strange. My mother called me. I lived 5 miles apart from them at the time in my own home. And my mother said, your dad's acting really strange. He won't prepare our breakfast. He won't get our meds. And he seemed to get angry when I asked him to do so. And so I hopped in the car and drove over because I thought this was really strange. My father was a retired chemist. He did everything by the book as it was supposed to be done. And I couldn't figure out what could have been wrong because the night before I had a conversation with him on the phone. We talked every day, and he had gone banking and food shopping, and he actually bought me extra groceries because I was an only child. He continued to like to spoil me. But when I got to the house, I went to check on him, and he was kind of slumpy in a chair in his home office. I thought he may have had a stroke, so I called 911. The ambulance came out. The EMTs actually found out when they arrived. He did not have a stroke, but he had a heart rate of 25. And when they took him to the hospital, they implanted a pacemaker, but this event probably started the night before. And when the event began, because of this heart failure event, he probably had oxygen deprivation to the brain. And because of the oxygen deprivation to the brain, he ended up with vascular dementia. So he ended up like a mid-stage Alzheimer's patient overnight. So at that point, he could not talk. He could no longer talk for himself or adequately care for my mom. So I, from that point on, stepped in to care for them both. And over the next several years, I entered into a caregiving journey that was very transformative. I put my life, both my personal and professional life, on the back burner, moved in with them. And initially, I tried to do everything myself as somebody who was an experienced human services worker. And that was not a sustainable pathway. But I learned to accept help and support along the way. And after my father passed, I pursued life coach training and became a caregiver coach. And my mom, both of my parents were able to age in place and pass with dignity here in our home. And I became a caregiver coach. And after my mom passed on Mother's Day 2012, about a year later, I published the Accidental Caregiver Survival Guide, which I'll show you a brief look of the book for a moment. The Accidental Caregiver Survival Guide. It's also in my selfie image that's a part of the overlay, the lower third below me. I'll reenact it for you for a moment. But the Accidental Caregiver Survival Guide, your roadmap to caregiving without regret. And I'm on a mission to help other caregivers take care of themselves, not kill themselves or burn themselves out along the way while they're providing dedicated support to their loved one. Because you know what? Right now, we have tens of millions of people in the United States and hundreds of millions of people around the world who are serving in the role of caregiver. And here in the United States, I was going to say too, and I'll let Karen come back in a moment, but here in the United States, 29% of family caregivers are dedicating 20 or more hours a week to caregiving support. And about 13%, I'm kind of a statistical junkie, about 13% of caregivers are providing full-time support. So that's quite a bit. So I know I said a lot to start off with, Karen, but I'll bring you back in to see what you have to add, because I know you cared for your mom.
No, I'm glad you shared those statistics, because I think caregivers in some ways are a hidden group, that we're not always aware of how many people out there, even people we in our own communities and we run into in the grocery store, are providing care. And as you mentioned, from 20 to 40 hours a week of care, that's a part-time to a full-time job that people are doing in addition to running the rest of their lives. And once again, until I was in the role of providing that care, I had no idea how much it entailed and how stressful it could be. And so like you, it's made me, my own personal experience made me passionate about wanting to offer support to other caregivers and wanting to give them a platform, a way to connect, a way to know that that we're here caring about them and appreciating the work that they're doing for their loved ones.
Awesome. So other thing I wanted to bring up today to kind of start us off, because today is actually, if you're aware, National Healthcare Decisions Day. National Healthcare Decisions Day, which is really important, and especially for caregivers, because one of the challenges that we face when we're walking hand in hand with our loved one through some of the scariest times that we'll ever face, which is really life and death medical decisions, very painful treatments. And I like to talk a lot, my parents both had difficult medical treatments along the way. And although they were the ones getting the chemotherapy or the needle injections or the radiation or other things that were going on, I may not have been experiencing it physically, but I can tell you, I felt it emotionally every step of the way. And I want to say too, with National Healthcare Decisions Day, is I was really blessed in that my dad took the time to really think about his estate planning. He wanted to make sure that my mother and I would be okay and that all decisions could be made after, he became incapacitated or passed away. He was excellent with that. He was willing to talk about it. My mother, on the other hand, who was a wonderful human being, did not want to talk about death and dying. It was a very taboo subject for her. But one thing I learned after my father had that issue and we got vascular dementia, there was one thing we didn't do. And it's because I think neither of us were aware of it. We never had a direct discussion, even though he filled out the paperwork and I was the healthcare proxy. We never had a discussion about how he would like to be cared for when he became terminal, what he wanted his last weeks to look like or his last days, what type of treatment he wanted. I never knew what that was. And he never had those discussions with my mom because she never wanted to talk about it. So it left me with a need to really carefully consider what he would want and try to be in his mind, knowing him, having raised me, try to figure that out. And that was very stressful because I felt that burden of responsibility. I didn't know about thinking about really in-depth healthcare decisions beforehand at end of life. My mother never wanted to talk about it. And after my father passed, I had the conversation with her because, again, I was a decision maker for her as a healthcare proxy, but I could not, I didn't know what her wishes were because she would not communicate them. So, and when I tried to talk to her about it, her flattering and validating answer to me was, Michael, I trust whatever decisions you will make. I don't want to talk about it. So that was wonderful, but that was also a burden at the same time because, again, when the time was arising, I had to try to make the best decisions for her. So if you want to give yourself and those that will potentially care for you, as well as those that you may care for, a gift, the best gift you can do is enter that taboo discussion. Think about it. Start small. Start to think about it a little bit about what you would want your own end of life care to look like. I know this is a hard subject to answer. And one of the resources I wanted to share today that I share with my coaching clients and try to help them get comfortable with, should they choose, is how to have the conversation. And I thought that I would share one of my top 5 free recommended resources is from the conversationproject.org, which is a nonprofit organization that was started by Ellen Goodman and a lot of other great people that really sensitively walks you through how to start to think about having the conversation with yourself, with your doctor, and with your loved ones. So Karen, if it would be okay with you, I was thinking about going to that site.
Sure. Let's do that.
Excellent. So I'm going to try a screen share. So we're going to see how this comes up. And Karen will let me know if it has showed up okay for her. Can you see my screen?
Yep. Yeah,
excellent. So you can find this site at theconversationproject.org. Theconversationproject.org is the website. So on this homepage, you're going to see a starter kit. So I'm going to take you to the starter kit. And right here, the first thing we could do is download and print your starter kit PDF. So I'm actually going to click that. It's going to open up into a new screen. And again, I just want to say here, I am not in any way, shape, or form an affiliate. They don't charge anything for this service anyway at theconversationproject.org, and I don't work for them. I'm just a big fan. I'm a raving fan of the service they offer, and I think this is a great nonprofit opportunity, and they do take donations. So I just want to give a shout out to the Conversation Project for the great work they're doing. But again, they say right from the beginning, Conversation Project is dedicated to helping people talk about their wishes for end-of-life care. We know that no guide and no single conversation can cover all the decisions that you and your family may face. And what a conversation could do is provide a shared understanding of what matters most to you and your loved ones. This can make it easier to make decisions when the time comes. And again, it's not going to answer every question, but it's going to help you get your thoughts together so that you can have the conversation with your loved ones. So, and you could use it whether you're getting ready to tell someone else what you want, or you want to help someone else get ready to share their wishes, meaning you could use this with your loved one as well. It's a great conversation starter. Just take your time. The kit's not meant to be completed in one sitting. It's meant to be completed as you need it throughout many conversations. And I want to say myself, I've actually used this myself, and I will go back to it over time because, whatever our thoughts are on the topic now could be different a year from now, 5 years from now. So know that your thoughts on this taboo subject of death and dying will change. I know my own viewpoint of this has been awakened because 6 years ago, before my father had that catastrophic heart failure incident, I really wasn't touched much by death and dying. But since my father passed in the last 5 years, I've actually lost 12 people close to me, friends and family members, to cancer, accidents, and other unexpected events. So I'm really well aware now of the importance of thinking about my own end of life needs and those are the people I care about. But let's consider some facts here. And again, the reason why National Healthcare Decisions Day is so important. Because again, there's a million reasons to avoid having this conversation, but let's look at some of these facts that they've provided, which are great. 90% of people say that talking with their loved ones about end-of-life care is important, but only 27% have actually done so. 60% of people say that making sure their family is not burdened by tough decisions is extremely important. 56% have not communicated their end-of-life wishes. 80% of people say that if seriously ill, they would want to talk to their doctor about wishes for medical treatment toward the end of their life. Only 7% of people report having had this conversation with their doctor. And you know what? My mother was treated for cancer with an oncologist who thought the chemotherapy would kill her before the cancer. She and her oncologist never had a discussion about end-of-life wishes. Never once. So this is not unusual. Even when you're facing a terminal illness is facing you in the face, doctors won't often initiate this conversation. So it's really important that if we want to have quality care that meets what our desires are and honors our wishes, that we really have this conversation. And the last item here, statistic they share, is 82% of people say it's important to put their wishes in writing, but only 23% of them have actually done it. So those are pretty startling statistics. And in closing about the conversation project, I just want to share these remembers, which is you don't need to have the conversation just yet. It's okay just to start thinking about it. But you know what? You have started thinking about it because I'm sharing it with you right now. So you've already met number one, which is a great thing. You could actually start out by writing a letter to yourself, a loved one, or a friend. I think it's great. I have a really close friend that I discuss these issues with. We're very open with one another about this. This is not my partner, just a really good best friend that I talk about this with. Before I kind of started putting these things in writing, it's really a great place to start. And again, having a conversation with a friend. And, having the conversation may reveal that you and your loved ones disagree. And that's okay, because it's simply important to know this and to continue to talk about it now and not during a medical crisis. I'm going to bring Karen back in a moment to talk about this. And having the conversation isn't just a one-time thing. It's the first in a series of conversations over time. And there's a wonderful questionnaire here. I'm not going to go through this all point by point. But again, I just wanted to start by making you aware of this fantastic resource. And I'm going to come back on screen now. And Karen, I know I'm going to bring you on in a second. We talked ahead of time that sometimes, even though we may have this conversation with our loved one, and I think it's important to have some of these things in writing because it's not unusual, especially for siblings who are caring for an elder parent, to not agree on the course of action. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. In my case, my mom and I had talked extensively about what she wanted at the end of life, primarily that she wanted to be at home. She didn't want to be in a hospital. But my older brother wasn't really in agreement with those wishes of hers. And it's primarily because she put it in writing. I had her wishes in my hand that I could show to him and talk to him about, to validate for myself, like, I am doing the right thing. This is what she wants, even if my brother disagrees with me, and even if my brother thinks we should be rushing her back to the hospital. It gave me the power to say, I know this is what mom wants. I know she wants to be home, and I will honor those wishes of hers. So I can't agree enough. It's so important to have the conversations. And as you pointed out, Michael, the starter kit is so helpful. First of all, because it tells you what to think about, which, when you're trying to contemplate what would I want at the end of life, you may not have the slightest idea what is it that I need to think about or plan for, or how do I grasp this big topic. But it leads you through each question to consider and helps you get your thoughts organized and down in writing. Then it also has, at the end, they have some suggestions for how to bring up the conversation, comments you could make or questions you could ask your loved ones. I think that's really helpful too, because sometimes we know we'd like to talk about it, but we just don't know how to say it. How do we put it into words, and how do we bring it up? So I found those tips to be really helpful at the end too.
Excellent, excellent, great. So I just want to acknowledge some of the great comments that are being left in the chat. It's so great to see some familiar names that I know of wonderful friends and colleagues, and some new people that I'm getting acquainted with. For folks, again, who may be having trouble seeing or hearing, usually if you refresh your browser or try coming back in, that should help. But it looks like most of the people are having a clean presentation, which is great. I know Kathy shared a great resource called Gift of Grace. So thank you for typing that into the chat. And I just want to give a shout out to my good friend and colleague, Roseanne Vanilla from familyaffairs.com. I know, Roseanne, you're in the house. I was mentioning to Karen before we got started with this session, I have a top 5 recommended resources for caregivers that I typically share my Caregiving Without Regret site, and I'm going to give you access to all of those resources later. But I'm now in the process of adding a 6th. And the 6th resource I want to talk about is actually familyaffairs.com. They're actually a sponsor of this event. They've done a great job of helping to promote the Caregiver Appreciation Day. So I just want to take a moment to take us to familyaffairs.com. And if you could just confirm for me, Karen, that you can see the website.
Yes, I can.
That would be great. Familyaffairs.com has lots of wonderful contributing authors. I'm a monthly contributor to the site, and there are so many great resources that are available here in information at Family Affairs. And I encourage you to check out familyaffairs.com. Affairs is spelled AFFAIRES.com. As you can see, they posted our beautiful advertisement for today's session, but please sign up for their newsletter so you don't miss a thing. And there are great contributors about a whole bunch of things for caregivers to take advantage of and access these wonderful resources. So again, I cannot speak highly enough and really treasure the relationship I have with members of the Family Affairs community. So thank you so much, Roseanne, and others for your support. I am going to come back on. So in moving along with other caregiving resources, I just want to say that one of the biggest challenges that I find for caregivers, and this was my initial journey with caregiving, for those of you who don't know, I was a professional caregiver before I became a family caregiver. I spent a couple decades of my life supporting individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'm still heavily involved in that community today. I provide some nonprofit consultation around quality enhancement and services. My first position in the field was working in a group home over 20 years ago, serving 6 adults with autism. And I got my greatest learning experiences not from, I have 2 master's degrees and I'm a certified professional coach and I love all of my academic experiences, but the best lessons I got for the rest of my life came from the time that I spent in that group home directly supporting adults with autism. This is also Autism Awareness Month. And to make another plug for familyaffairs.com, they're promoting a ton of articles and information. So if you're caring for a loved one with autism, a child with special needs, or an adult with autism, be sure to check out some of those great resources again. But the reason I bring this up is because I had this professional background, this experience, and I was an only child who was used to doing things on my own and being very independent. When my father had that sudden catastrophic heart failure, could no longer care for my mom, and I stepped in to care for them both, I jumped into the deep end of the pool of care. And I tried to be Superman. I tried to do it all. When people would ask me, what do you need for help? Or, how can I help you? I didn't even know what to tell them. So I did not even know what to say. So I tried to let them know that I'm sorry, I got distracted. Somebody had just mentioned the chat when they started over. It started over. I apologize for that. So again, we're using a new system. I did notice that in the chat, but hopefully you'll catch back up. But again, when I jumped into that deep end of care and tried to do it on my own, that was not a sustainable pathway. It was not sustainable to try to be on what I call caregiver isolation island and be like Superman. So one of the things that I like to suggest to caregivers, and what I learned after my father passed, I was in the role of caring for my mom by herself, is I actually made a list of things that I did. I made a list of things that I would do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and an as needed basis. And then when people like my cousins or other good friends would ask me how they could help, I had a menu. I had items for them to select from, because when people self-select what they can do based on their own skill or talent, they're likely to feel good that they can accomplish what you want them to do and go forward and do it. What I have found in coaching clients that come from larger families, there tends to be a sibling, a primary person that cares, that takes the primary role in caring for their loved one, and other siblings don't step up to the plate in the way that they feel satisfied with. So disharmony and disagreement can take place. When I suggest this strategy of providing a menu of options for people to choose from, there many times family members that they consider to be deadbeat siblings will step up to the plate and choose an activity to fulfill and do it and be glad they've done it and will gladly choose something else. This takes the primary caregiver out of the role of directing and into the role of facilitating, of leading, of seeking people to support them based on their time, talent, and treasure that they can offer. And that actually produces harmony. So Karen, I didn't know what you thought about that I just shared.
That's a great idea. I remember in the middle of caring for my mom that much of the time I felt like I was in the middle of chaos, just trying to organize one crisis after another. And people would say to me in the moment, can I do anything to help? And much of the time, many times I would just say no, because I couldn't even think of what I needed help with. I couldn't even get myself organized enough to know how to direct them or what to tell them to do in that moment. And I love this idea to have it written out in such a way that I could show it to people, or at least remind myself, these are the tasks I need to do each day. Where could you help? How could you plug in and help me? So I think that's fantastic.
Well, thank you. So the other thing I found is what I said was beautiful. Good work for you, right? But it could be still overwhelming. I know when you're in the caregiving role and you're running 24/7, and like I said, there's a number of people, 13 to 19% of caregivers are providing full-time care, meaning 40 or more hours a week of direct caregiving support. And if you are caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's or in the later stages of Parkinson's, that the depth of the type of support that you could be providing could be physically and emotionally taxing. So even taking the time to create this menu that I've suggested could seem like an overwhelming burden. So with some of the caregivers, again, I have the privilege to support. One of my other favorite free online resources is a site called lotsahelpinghands.com. lotsahelpinghands.com. And I'm going to take you just to show you what that site looks like, because again, this is such a wonderful, wonderful free resource. So again, I'm just going to verify with Karen that you can see.
Yes.
So again, it's at lotsahelpinghands.com is the URL. This is a free resource. You get to create an online community. So I'm going to log in. I have an account that I'm going to log into just so you can see what so I have an account that I've just created for demo purposes called Bloom's Helping Hands. But I actually used this several years ago when I was caring for my mom. I told you my mother's nickname was Bunny. My parents were Sunny and Bunny were their nicknames. So I created an online community called Bunny's Helpers. The reason I wanted to have this online community is that um, people would be able, for one thing, it's streamlined communication, and I had a calendar. So this is basically a social media site is what it turns into. So what you could do with the people function, if you have names and email addresses of the people that you want, you could just simply click and add members, and you can choose which fields people will enter into. It's really easy to add members. And then you have a calendar function. You can create a new activity on the calendar, specify exactly what the activity is that you're doing, what you need support with. Could be support with a medical appointment or preparing meals or shopping or anything, anything that you want. Maybe it's somebody to stay with your mother or your father or your spouse while you go take a class for some respite. You could actually list the name, put a calendar label, type whatever notes you want in there. Everybody who's a member of your community, who volunteers to be a member of your community, will get an email notification that a new request has come up, and people can sign up to provide support without you having to make a dozen phone calls. This can be for anything that you do. Now, for some of you that may not be so tech savvy, how this has worked really well for some of my caregiving clients is younger members of families are really online a lot and love to communicate online a lot. A great task that you could assign to a volunteer family member to help you with is to manage your online community, because you can make anybody an administrator. They can help set up the calendar. The other thing that's great too, announcements. When my mother was going through some of the most trying times and she was in the hospital and I was spending lots of times in the hospital, it could be really overwhelming to be making updates about my mother's condition to a whole bunch of people or to start a phone chain. I was very simply from the hospital room able to add an announcement, and almost like a journal update, I could journal whatever update I wanted. And again, make it so once I typed the announcement, everybody who was a member of my community could get the update via message. Okay, or I could just save the messages on the homepage of the community if you didn't want to overburden people with emails. But the great thing about using the announcements is that you can keep a really organized track of the messages that you're sending out. Other people can send you messages. And the other area that I like to use too, and you can use as much or as little as you want, is in Vital Info. They have a whole bunch of tabs here that you can add all kinds of contacts, general health information, allergies, doctors. So the other thing that's great about this too is, let's say you have a home care agency that is coming in to provide some ongoing support to your loved one. You can keep them updated with key information right here and give a coordinator from the home care community, make them a member of your Lots of Helping Hands community. So while I'm in here, Karen, I just wanted to know if maybe you had any questions about this.
Well, not a question. I just wanted to say that I'm currently using Lots of Helping Hands within my community. We have a woman with dealing with lung cancer who has no family members here, and about 20 people have stepped up to offer to help her out. But the idea of coordinating 20 different people when she needs something would just be overwhelming. But we've been able to use Lots of Helping Hands and create a calendar for her, and everyone goes on and signs up for whatever they can do. And it's been a fantastic. It's been so helpful to us.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I am going to come back on screen again, and we'll take a look here at. So we've rolled through some resources here. I see some great chat here, and yeah, somebody had brought in about the URL for Gift of Grace. Thank you, Attell, for sharing that. Thank you so much, Attell. mygiftofgrace.com. Just to let you know. I'm doing full service kind of hangout duty right now, so I'm trying to kind of eyeball the questions that are coming in and run the different things of the chat and take you to different places to make this as interactive as possible. So I appreciate that. Just to let you know too, because I know I'm sharing a lot of information here. All of you will automatically get the replay of the session emailed to you afterwards, and you should be able to watch it in its entirety seamlessly. So there should not be any issue there. So if there are any other questions that come up, we will be answering questions later because we love to hear from you too. And I know Karen and I would love to take questions. And we're a little over halfway through Caregiver Appreciation Day. And I think it's good for one of my favorite things, which is a chocolate break. So I brought some chocolate. Unfortunately, I can't share it through the screen, but the reason I have brought chocolate here, and I'm cheering everybody with a Hershey bar right now. But one of the reasons I'm sharing some chocolate is because, and here's a pill box, okay? So one of my mantras is put chocolate in your pill box. Put chocolate in your pill box. And the reason is these pill boxes were like a constant companion during my caregiving journey. I was forever filling pill boxes for both, especially when I was caring for both of my parents, because my dad used to manage everything for my mom and himself, but then I took care over managing both of them. So I made sure that they got the right medication at the right time, the right dosage, all those things that you want to do to safeguard. I was really meticulous about that. So I was always surrounded by pill boxes. But the pill box, when I began to think about it as I was writing my book a couple of years ago, the pill box is a metaphor for a calendar, because you know how it has the days of the week. And I think of this as like a calendar. And the chocolate, I'm a chocoholic, so chocolate brings me joy. So, but there are other things that bring that bring you joy. So if you're serving in the role of the caregiver, it's so important that you think about the things that bring you joy and schedule them in your calendar regularly. It's really, I think, important to have something at least once per week that you put in your calendar to look forward to, because when you're serving in the caregiving role, your calendar becomes filled with all kinds of need to do things like medical appointments and household needs and car repair. There are so many things that we need to do that when it comes to scheduling us and our needs, we put that all on the back burner. So that was where my mantra, put chocolate in your pillbox, came from. It's really because I'll give you something I think about often. I have a wonderful cousin, beautiful cousin, who has Parkinson's disease. And in June, we're going to be going here in Massachusetts on the annual Walk for Parkinson's, which we do to support her and everybody who has Parkinson's. A few years ago, when I was walking the track that they have here in Massachusetts, they have the Parkinson's annual Parkinson's Walk at the Reebok International headquarters, and they have a great walking track that people do the miles of walking on. I met a gentleman who was caring for his wife, and we had a talk about how his care is going. He was looking really tired, but it was a beautiful day. We were taking the walk, and I just asked him, I said, what is it that you like to do for fun? And he says, fun? Well, I retired a few years ago, and when I imagined my retirement, I thought I'd be going golfing regularly. But my wife's health declined really about a year and a half ago. She's entering sort of the later stages of Parkinson's, and I'm not golfing, and I miss it. And I said, oh, well, I can understand that. I'm not a golfer, but I know people who love to golf. That's a really important activity for them. So I asked, so when do you think you might go golfing again? It's beautiful out now. We're approaching summer. It's June, it's summertime. And he said, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe after my wife passes. And I thought that was just so sad. He's going to wait for however many more years it could be, and why. So, I asked if somebody came in perhaps to provide a little bit of care to his wife to keep her company, would he consider going out, to the golf course, even if it was once or twice during the summer? And we talked about, and I think he really gave it some thought, because I said, you know what? You deserve to have some joy in your retirement too. And I bet your wife would want you to as well. So I think you could easily, not easily, but if you can find that time, even just once a month or twice, to give yourself that joy, she's going to be happier for it too, knowing you're getting some peace and joy, because You deserve it because you're doing so much for your wife. You're giving yourself selflessly. That's hard, and we want you to be in it for the long term. And the other thing that I would say too about this is that it's so easy for us to just keep down this spiral. And I even have to remind myself of this too, as I provide a lot of support to others. Even if you're not yet in the caregiving role, it's so important to take times for ourselves to rejuvenate and re-energize, because again, we all only go down this journey of our lives once. So we deserve to live it to the fullest. And I'm glad to see so many people saying amen, and they love, the chocolate. So that was my brief, like I said, chocolate break. And I will dig into the chocolate after the episode, because I don't want to have chocolate all over my lips right now, but I'm doing that. But Karen, I didn't know if you had anything to add in about that. So.
Oh, I just think that's wonderful. I love your story about encouraging the husband to get out and play golf. And it occurred to me as being involved in hospice, that what hospice and home care staff workers should be doing is remembering the caregiver is your patient as well as the patient. And remember to ask caregivers what they're doing for themselves, and talk to them about it, and encourage them and validate them that it's okay to take a day off. It's okay to eat your chocolate. It's okay to take care of yourself. And I think too often our society gives the message that we're supposed to be selfless. We're supposed to be thinking only of the other person. And it seems to me caregivers really need that validation that their loved one will be fine if they leave for a day and someone else comes in and offers the care. And they need encouragement and support to do the self-care that they require.
Absolutely. So I have a number of other free resources that are available, and I'm not going to go through and demo them all during this session, because we want to take some of your questions too and continue dialogue with Karen about some other issues that we could talk about. But I want to let you know that I made it very easy for you to access. I have a special gift for you today, which is my Caregiving Without Regret Manifesto, and access to the 5 resources. And I'm now adding a 6th resource, like I said, which is the wonderful familyaffairs.com on the page. So I'm about to pop in something for you that you're about to see, which is the display on how you can get the Caregiving Without Manifesto. If you just click that link, it's going to open up a new browser window for you, and it'll take you to a page. You do not need to opt in. You'll be able to, and this will be available to you after the session as well. I mean, you don't have to just take advantage of it now, but it should work to get you to a page on my website that is just for the viewers of this webinar, to get the manifesto and the links to the other resources from the resource guide that I offer. And just so you know, if you have trouble accessing it or want to know, I am going to type the link into the chat, which is actually the direct link to the page is caregivingwithoutregret.com, caregivingwithoutregret.com/manifesto. I created this just for this webinar for all of you as my special gift in honor of Caregiver Appreciation Day. And the other thing I wanted to share, if you have any questions at all, you are more than welcome to at any time. Just send me an email at michael@bloomforcoach.com. So it's michael@bloomforcoach.com. So again, that's how you can reach me as well. And I'm going to let you know too, this is a gift of a webinar today, and I'm in the gift giving mood because it's Caregiver Appreciation Day. So my schedule is like over the top busy this month in April, but I am opening up a super 7 slots in my schedule in May for caregiver recharge sessions. So if you or a caregiver is really kind of struggling right now and needs an energy recharge and a practical, in a practical consultation session, just shoot me an email at michael@bloomforcoach.com. The first 7 takers are going to get a 30-minute private session with me, either via phone or a Google Hangout like we're doing right now in a private session. And I'd be happy to provide that support during the month of May. So I just wanted to juice up the gifts here because I can't pass chocolate through your computer screen. So yeah. So Karen, I was wondering if there were things you wanted to share as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michael, for those resources. And I'll just mention, for those of you who aren't familiar with me, I'm a hospice physician, and I do an online interview series called End of Life University, 2 interviews a month with various experts on all aspects of the end of life. And so that website is eoluniversity.com. And if you go to, I'll type it in, eoluniversity.com/caregivers, I have a page related to this Caregiver Appreciation Day. And there's a self-care manual for caregivers on my site you can download for free also. I'll type that in.
I'm doing it now. So you said EOL University?
eoluniversity.com/caregivers with an S. That's it. Yep. And you can go to that page and download that self-care manual. And I also have something called Caregiver Notes, a template that I made up for myself because I found when I was taking care of my mom, it happened over and over again. In the middle of taking care of her, I'd realize that I was running out of something or I needed something. And 30 minutes later, of course, I would completely have forgotten about it. And I'd get a phone call from the hospice nurse saying, "I'm on my way over. Do you need anything?" And I couldn't remember what it was that I needed. So anyway, I created this notes template to just kind of carry around so you can keep jotting down whatever you think of during the day that you might need, and have it handy when someone asks you these questions, what you need help with or what they can bring for you. And that's on that website too.
So great. eoluniversity.com/caregivers. Karen and I, Karen, it's been such great fun to be co-hosting this session with you, and we're playing with this new technology. So which is really awesome. I just want to give a shout out to a few other people. First of all, Bruce, you woke up in the middle of the night in Australia to come and attend the session. So kudos to you. And if you are caring for someone right now, I'm sending great love and support to you down under, because kudos to you for getting up to attend this session. But again, this session, the full replay will be available and get emailed to you directly, including the resources. I also, Attell is the president of the International Caregivers Association. It's such an honor to have you in the house, Attell, Dr. Ward. And she asked if I would be her caregiver. Well, I'm your lifelong friend. I'm your lifelong friend. So I'm here. So big, sending love and kisses up to me. And so great to see so many people here, and so great to have you. And people are making mention of real respite funding. Carrie, you said real respite funding is needed in order for caregivers to actually take care of themselves, especially in pediatrics. Let me take a sip of water. That's very true. Absolutely. And respite is so vital, and not just for our family caregivers, but for our dedicated professional caregivers as well. And I want to say too, because pediatric care is so important, the first resource I shared with you, the conversationproject.org, one thing I wanted to mention, they have a great resource there for the parents that are taking care of a child who may have a really frightening illness or a terminal illness. They actually have a pediatric conversation guide so that you can have a gentle conversation with your children. I know from the few people that I've come in contact with who have kids who have terminal illnesses, these children grow up really fast. I mean, they take on an era of grace, spirituality. They're wise beyond their years. But a guide like this could really help parents and children have what must be one of the most difficult discussions. I took care of my parents during their end-of-life journeys, and that happened in the way that we expect things to happen, and that parents pass before children. And that was excruciating emotionally enough for me. So I could only imagine what a parent must go through who's taking care of a child who has significant needs. So, shout out to you as well. And the other thing too is the conversationproject.org has a wonderful kit that could help you start the conversation between you and your physician, because that's a really important component as well, is to make sure your physician knows what your wishes are too, because they're an important part of your care team. And Karen, I know recently you did a session about the conversation, and again thinking about National Healthcare Decisions Day, to know if there was anything you wanted to add about that.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing that came up when we were talking about the pediatric starter kit that the Conversation Project came out with is that kit's actually helpful for any parents when, even if you don't have a terminally ill child, but when there's a death in the family, of maybe a death of a grandparent. I referred a family I know who was dealing with that and needed to figure out, how do I talk to my kids about death and dying? They actually use that starter kit to help them in the conversation with their young children about death and dying, and found it really helpful. So it's definitely worth checking out that pediatric starter kit if you're a parent with younger children. Even if you're not dealing with terminal illness, it can help you as you face those issues.
Absolutely. So again, I appreciate the great comments that are coming in on this Caregiver Appreciation Day. We so very much appreciate it. Getting great interaction, and even folks, we have some amazing people in our audience today, and really pleased to see the resources that are even being shared amongst them within the chat. So this is great too. The one thing about those of us who are members of what I consider to be the greatest force for humanity, which is our caring force, we have a bond. And caregivers, especially family caregivers, tend to be an overlooked population.
Mm-hmm.
And we find it to be, that's why I started in this work several years ago, and find it to be so important to be on a mission to provide resources and support, and to have caregiving hours like this to talk about these issues. Because even if you don't, as a caregiver, know exactly what you want, to know that you are part of a community that understands what you're going through, and even just to come and get a virtual hug. I mean, I know when I was in the midst of caring for both of my parents, and I had been an administrator in human services for a number of years before that. So I was on call. It was a 24/7 job. I had a lot of responsibilities. And when Sunday nights came along, sometimes I would dread going to work the next day, because I knew the great things that we would tackle in the world of administration and human services. And when I was caring for my parents and I put my career aside, and I was approaching Sunday nights, I started to dread Mondays, because I found another week full of medical appointments and responsibilities, and feeling alone, because I initially, in those initial months of caring for my parents, I totally was in it for them. I thought that I was doing the best thing by being all in for them and not really taking care of my own needs. And that was not really a sustainable pathway, which is why I think it's so important that we have these forums, that people reach out for the support, and even think about investing, if you have resources, which I know can be scarce, in some private caregiving support or coaching or consultation. There are lots of great resources out there, because I tell you what, it's really important as a caregiver to have a sounding board as you're processing your ideas, because we're walking hand in hand with our loved ones through some of the scariest situations that we'll ever face. And all of your emotions are going to creep up. You're going to feel angry. You're going to feel sad. You're going to feel, at times, even humor will pop up over non-humorous situations. Humor actually saved me. I told this story recently at a live event that I had done, that my dad was a very finicky eater, before he ended up with the vascular dementia. And he would get up in the middle of the night. And during the time that I was initially caring for him, I think I was lucky if I got 2 solid hours of sleep a day, because He would get up at strange times, get dressed, think he was a kid, think he'd need to go to school. When he was a young man, his dad would take him to the train station. So he would think I was his father, although I was his son. So my way of distracting him from trying to go out in 25-degree weather at 3 a.m. was to say, we have a little time before you need to catch the train, so let's get something to eat. One particular time, we were getting this meal, and my mom had an issue and needed my support in the bathroom, in the facilities. So I left some food on the table for to be prepared and excuse myself, and said I was going to take care of her and come back to him. When I came back to the room, I had all kinds of edibles in clear containers on the counter for him to nosh on, because he wouldn't eat meals, really. He would just kind of graze at what was available. So there were chocolate chip cookies on the table, and I had taken out to make a sandwich with chicken salad. When I came back from helping my mother, he was eating a chocolate chip chicken salad sandwich and enjoying every bite. Because I asked him how it was, and he said it was terrific. So my humorous response to this was, when I talked to one of my best friends later that day, I said, I've decided to call my kitchen the Dementia Diner. You never know what delicious, strange creation was going to be created on any given day. So I think humor is really important to keeping us going during these scary times as well. And so I just, again, wanted to bring that up. And Karen, I'm going to bring you back on for some comments. I know we're reaching the top of the hour to say a few things, and we'll see what other questions or thoughts we may have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of our Carrie in the chat emphasized that too. You got to have humor, which is so true. We have to remember that, to be able to laugh at ourselves and laugh together. And I loved your offer of sending out a virtual hug, because that's actually what I would love to do, is be able to take all caregivers out there in my arms and say, thank you for everything that you're doing. And please know you're really not alone. There's so many of us who understand what you are going through and who appreciate so much what you're doing, not only for your loved one, but for our society and for humanity as well, with everything that you are offering and the sacrifices that you are making. So please know that you're not alone. Please turn to the resources that we've been talking about, and seek out the help that you need. And I know Attell mentioned a caregiver fatigue timeline. Did you see that on here,
Yes.
Michael?
Yeah, I believe so.
Caregiver fatigue timeline, that she will send a free copy to anyone who emails her. That's in the chat line.
Yeah, so if you email her, she put it in the chat. So it's Lord at icareassoc.com. So Attell has great resources as well. So I asked, I would encourage you to take some, to connect with her. She's a wealth of information. So, and is a family caregiver herself, a dedicated caregiver to her husband, who has dementia as well, and she does a remarkable job and is out to support others. So again, it's so nice to see such heartwarming comments. Bruce from Australia is a funeral celebrant helping people with the conversation after death, and you have a book as well called Making It Yours, Preparing the Best Finale Ever. Well, that book just sounds fabulous. I don't know if Bruce and Karen are already connected, but it sounds like you two were in a similar niche area. So it'd be great connection. So I'm so glad that you're here, Bruce. And all of you that are here, they're making such great comments. This has been, wonderful. And I think somebody named Crazy, if I'm reading that correctly, said singing about laughing and crying at the same time. I could think many times that I was singing about laughing and crying at the same time. So there was definitely, I forgot to put myself back on camera here. I'm going to do that now. Sorry about that, Karen. And I can think of many people that are singing and laughing at the same time when dealing with caregiving responsibilities. It's a really tough journey, but please know to take care of yourself along the way. I've shared great resources. Again, the manifesto is available at caregivingwithoutregret.com/manifesto. Dr. Wyatt's Karen's resources are available at eoluniversity.com/caregiver.
Caregivers with an S. Yeah,
Caregivers.
caregivers.
eoluniversity.com/caregivers. Please email Attell for her resources. And again, I'm happy to offer what I'm calling the Super 7 Caregiver Recharge in May to the first 7 action takers who request a free consultation session with me. Just send me an email at michael@bloomforcoach.com. I see we have reached the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of people's valuable time. I hope that you have gotten a lot of value from this powerful hour. And we hope that you will please stay in touch with both of us. And if you are serving in the caregiving role, please, please, please put some chocolate in your pillbox and schedule some joy in your life and take care of yourself because you deserve it. So, Karen, I didn't know if you had any final words before we end.
Well, I thought I should mention coming up 1 hour from now is the next event for Caregiver Appreciation Day, which will be an interview with Nina Mandelson, a nutrition and health coach who's going to talk about healthy eating for caregivers, simple ideas on, and I'm sure it will include chocolate. Nina's also a chocoholic, Michael, so there will be chocolate involved in the healthy eating. If any of you are interested in tuning into that, that's an audio interview. You can learn about it on that caregivers page on EOL University if you want to tune in for that.
Fantastic.
So, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's been really fun, Michael.
It has been tremendous fun, Karen, and I look forward to ongoing collaboration with you.
Absolutely.
As we do what we can to support our caring force. So, to everyone out there, make the rest of your day wonderful, and please stay in touch. And thank you so much for attending. And go forward with energy and care, my friends.
Enjoy your chocolate, Michael.